Hello my lovely lilies, and welcome to my Birthday Mega Collab. Thank you so much for watching. My birthday was August 16th, and I want to thank everybody for the beautiful birthday wishes. It meant so much to me. I mean, the morning I woke up to my birthday, I woke up to such beautiful and wonderful outpouring of love for my birthday. It truly made my birthday absolutely amazing. I want to thank each and every one of these narrators who sent me audio. They were so quick and they were so wonderful. I don't think all these narrators know how much I love them and how much I love their support. They're wonderful friends. They're wonderful family. I really would like everyone who's watching, if you haven't already subscribed to these narrators, you really need to go subscribe, watch, hit that little bell so you can see their videos every time they come up, and you'll enjoy. I promise you will enjoy every one of these narrators. They're amazing people. They're amazing narrators, amazing storytellers, and you won't be disappointed. I promise you will not be disappointed. As well, I want to thank everyone that has subscribed to my channel. We've hit 1,500, guys. I mean, we've hit that mark, and it's amazing, and it's all because of you. Everybody listening, it's because of you that we've got this far, my lovely lilies. Thank you so much. I mean, I don't think I can ever thank you enough for the love, the support, the subscribing, the watching, the sharing. It means the world to me. I wish I could hug each and every one of you, but I'm going to wrap this up because everybody wants to get to the stories, and I don't blame you. They're amazing stories. Up first, we have Todd McKenzie, who wrote a special story for my birthday, and you really need to check him out and support him. He's a great writer and a great person, and if you don't already know, he's my husband as well, so I guess I'm a little biased. But check out this first story. It's the intro to the video, wishing happy birthday and leading into such amazing stories, and thank you so much, guys. I'm so thankful, and enjoy. Bye.
Without a doubt, this was indeed the most exciting birthday celebration Lillie had had since she was a little squaw girl. Life has a way of using adulthood to deaden special occasions, making each one just another day. But the colored feathers that dangled from the streamers, the green icing of the prairie-designed cake, the large dream catcher that hung in the kitchen's entryway, and the faces of many friends encompassing the round table, made the childhood memories return. Things had been hard for her friends with these recent days. Many times Lillie would tell her husband about the troubles of her peers and her sadness for not being there for any of them in person. But now they were here with her, peers among the world of dark tales told around the flames of imagination. It was with them the efforts of the Shakowin Tatetob continued despite the discouraging lack of time and ever-constant neediness of babes. Her friends had been there to encourage her. Her children expressed their pride for their mother at every hearing of her voice. Her own mother heard the tongues of their ancestors in her daughter's voice. Her husband delighted in the sight of his love, blossoming in the joy she pursued. All began the birthday melody. Her face blushed rose red. Tears filled her emerald eyes. She never believed things could go this well. Then the candle lit. The room went silent and black, save the flickering of the flame. Shadows danced on every face, writhing through every sudden vindictive grin. Whispers from outside seeped through the windowsill. Night had fallen without stars or moon. Lillie felt cold tingles creep down her spine like an icy centipede. "Make a wish, honey," her husband said. "They are waiting." The whispering rose to a murmur as Lillie leaned over to blow out the candle, then a commotion at the pursing of her lips. It was an excitement felt throughout the room, a wish that would come true at the revealing of her future. Hands went to the window. Breaths fogged the glass. The wood screeched at its opening. New friends had arrived to the party, and they had many more tales to share. But they needed voices, and with the extinguishing candle, they entered the room. The future is as bright as black. Shadows are chased away by the dawn, yet they are still felt by the stories they leave behind. The wish for continuation has been made. Time to enjoy the cake.
I called out to you during your time in need, strung my heart out for you, bore it on my sleeve. You broke it. I trusted you with my life, sacrificed all that I would need for you. I gave you everything I had. No response. I called you for a date. I took the time to set it all up for you. Everything was ready, but you left no answer. I went to our house. I hoped somewhere in your heart you hadn't betrayed my trust. You broke it. In your bed, you were lying with another man. Trust was gone. I stared in disbelief at you. No response. I was infuriated. You lied with him, my best friend, someone I trusted. I asked you both why. No answer. He forced me out of the room. He asked me reasons for being here. You never told him about me. My ribcage, he broke it. My best friend was beating me to death. Someone I knew all my life now wanted me dead. You gave no response. You watched on and smiled. A smile so wicked that it changed me. A smile that was devoid of any sympathy. You left me with no answer. I left your home in tears, blood pouring out, my body limp and near death. All love and admiration for you. You broke it. I snapped. I no longer cared for you. All that I cared was that you paid. I asked myself if there was a better option. I received no response. With my mind on the brink of collapse, I left. I went out and bought tools. Tools of destruction. I continued as I worked to ask myself if this was right. I received no answer. I forged on for hours in the garage of my home. I continued to work until I had it. The tool to end my suffering. The tool to break you. I sharpened the edge, making sure it was clean. I wasn't content with hurting my friend. I wanted to hurt you too, till you could give no response. I made my way down to your house. I kept to the shadows of the night, concealed myself till I arrived and revealed myself. You could not give me an answer. In shock and horror of your predicament, you called my friend to aid you, but he was of no use. I broke him. As you tried to call for help, I muffled your screams so that no one could hear you out. No one could provide a response. I slammed my edge brutally down, turning your smooth and beautiful body, turning it into a grotesque mess of flesh and bone. Your calls for help mustered no answer. I cleaned your bodies up, carrying you out. I packed up both of you in my trunk. I drove out beyond the city and beyond viewing eyes, so that no one could see the law broken. After your body was burned, no one knew. No one but me will remember you. When people ask for your name, there will be no response. Just as you murdered me, destroying everything I was, I made sure to leave you the same, left alone and gone, with no answer as to why.
You wake up to find yourself lying flat in an unfamiliar and utterly filthy room. Your head pounds as you sit up and survey your surroundings.
Oh, what hit me?
You notice the room is dimly lit by a hanging bulb that threatens to flicker out at any moment. Large piles of debris are scattered about the small room, and there are no windows.
Hey, who said that? Where am I?
To your left, right, and straight ahead of you, there are sinister-looking doors. You do not fully comprehend your situation, but you must choose one of the doors. One door leads
Hey,
to salvation.
Are you ignoring me?
One leads to an endless maze of halls and passages that will trap you forever. And the third leads you to eternal damnation. You must...
Wait. What? Are you serious?
You must choose a door.
Why? The exit's right there.
In the cold, frightened core of your heart, you know that there is no escape from the desolate predicament you now find yourself in.
Dude, the door's right there. It even says so, see? Exit. Right on the front. Big letters, too.
After a moment's struggle, you come to realize the futility of resistance, and return once more to the crossroads of passages. There is no way out.
Only because some bastard locked up the door.
You grumble to yourself as you contemplate.
It was you, wasn't it? Jerk.
Contemplate your fate.
Fine, fine. Eeny, meeny, miny. That one.
You say to yourself as you choose the door to your left. Unbeknownst to you is that that particular door leads only to misery, death, and the destruction of your very soul.
What? Oh, hell no.
A sudden burst of intuitive clarity causes you to leap away back before the door closes behind you, sealing your fate.
It wasn't intuition. I just said...
You must make your choice between the remaining two doors. With a sigh, you go towards the one in the middle.
I know what I'm doing.
You mutter.
I don't need you telling me. Prick.
You take hold of the doorknob to the passage that will lead you to wander the maze of all eternity, oblivious to the fate that will soon befall you. Deathless, mindless, and hopeless, your rotting corpse will still walk on long after...
Gah!
You cry as you once again leap back from your choice of passage.
Don't get snappy with me. So, one door left. Salvation, oh.
You say as you head towards the final door and grasp the handle. The path you have chosen will be long and fought with peril. You will face unsurmountable, bloodthirsty foes, and travel farther than the simple realms you think of as life and death. Should you fail, your tattered soul will serve as one of the tortured spectral servants of the Lord of the Underworld. Should you succeed, you will have all the unimaginable pleasures of this world and the next, though you will be doomed to remain in the Underworld as Gwyn's right-hand man.
Hold up, you omniscient, lying pack of dog crap. You said one of the doors would get me out of here. Salvation, remember? How is being trapped in the Underworld salvation? Get me out.
There is no escape.
Don't give me that. There's always a way out.
There is no...
What are you doing? Where did you get that pipe?
It was lying in one of those piles of trash. What does it look like I'm doing? I'm going to bust down the exit.
You can't do that. It's against the rules.
Oh, there are rules now, eh? What happened to your big, scary narrator voice?
There is no escape.
There will be. Just give me a minute. Just a little... There. Ha! Got it.
You can't...
I just did. Goodbye and good luck, Mr. Scary Voice. I'm going home. Go find another stooge.
Oh. Fuck. I'm out of here too. This place gives me the willies.
I've always hated my twin brother, Richard. It was a liquid hatred that slithered through my body like an ice-cold vapor. His speech, his mannerisms, his style of dress caused me to cringe with disdain. Years of living in his shadow, enduring his endless taunts and sickening arrogance, planted the seed of revulsion and the desire to rip his heart out. As kids, he was, blatantly, favored by our parents, while I was labeled the difficult one, and the contempt we felt for one another because of this was palpable. Through the years, our conversations were always peppered with snide remarks and criticisms. There was never any warmth or shared moments of affection, just a barrage of accusations and hidden agendas. The day he died, I rejoiced. I'm sure that sounds heartless, maybe even a bit psychotic, but it's the truth. There was no outpouring of emotion or tears of sorrow. I lacked any feelings of remorse. I felt nothing. Richard's death was inconsequential, a minor distraction, which was easily disregarded. I viewed my parents' overwhelming grief as tedious. Their constant whimpering made me want to vomit. I would snicker under my breath whenever they would mention my brother's name, and then crumble into an emotional heap. Their devastation was always met with a drawn-out yawn and a vindictive smirk, because I knew how much these people despised me. I was a reminder of what they had lost, and it was delicious. At his funeral, I looked on with eyes clouded with amusement as I watched my mother make a spectacle of herself by collapsing onto Richard's coffin and repeatedly screaming, "Why?" as my father tried to console her. Our eyes met, and again I smiled, for I knew the truth. They had murdered the wrong son.
So a couple years back, I think this was an ongoing thing from when I was about 15 to 16. A few years prior, I had gotten a new neighbor. She was an older lady, like much of my neighborhood, considering I lived with my grandma in a 50-plus community. She was very sweet at first. She also had the cutest dog ever, sweet little three-legged chihuahua who was friends with my dog. But that's not what you're here to read, I'm sure. Once I got into high school, she started to get a bit crazy. At first it started out kind of tame. I was accused of stealing from her house. I couldn't understand the accusation, really. I mean, I was the only teenager around, and you don't see many old people breaking into houses. The accusations were very odd though, because she accused me of stealing dog treats and incense from her. The accusations got more and more absurd as the time went on, the last accusation being that I broke into her house and moved her furniture a little bit. This was the start of shit actually getting scary. One day, while I was out pulling weeds out of the garden, she sees me from her front door and comes out. She starts screaming and cursing at me, threatening to call the cops on me to stop going into her house, which I have never once been in even before when I was friends with the previous tenants. She then went on to say that if the police wouldn't do anything, that she would take care of me herself. At the time, I figured she was just threatening to sue me because I think like a rational person. After about a week or two of hearing nothing from her or the police, like she threatened my dad and grandma are wanting to go there, so we all get in the car. I was the first one in the car and seated in the back seat where the windows were tinted enough that you couldn't really make out if anyone was sitting back there or not. She apparently had seen my dad and grandma get in though. My neighbor from across the street was a family friend, and she called my dad telling him about having to call the cops on our crazy neighbor because she heard her screaming for me from inside her house. She had walked out to see what was going on just to see this crazy woman stalking around outside my house with a giant kitchen knife. She had apparently thought I was home alone at the time. She ended up being held for 72 hours under a psych evaluation, but was deemed fine when she came back. I wasn't allowed to be home alone anymore. Not only after she came home though, she tried to be very nice and apologized to me while my dad was with me. It didn't last long though, because about a month later, the same old accusations started again. I think she learned not to look for me with a knife again though, because she would just call me a bitch or cunt whenever we were outside at the same time. If I was outside on my own, she would watch me from her windows. She even growled at me a couple times. Eventually, she was taken for another 72-hour psych evaluation. for something I wasn't told about, and she wasn't allowed to come back to the neighborhood. So, crazy neighbor lady who wanted me dead for stealing dog treats? Let's not meet again. P.S. This wasn't a case of dementia. According to her children, she's bipolar and stopped taking her meds.
I've been lying down for hours now. It's 5:35 a.m. and there's not much I can do. You know what the worst part is about my situation? I'm in the same room as my parents. They keep looking at me, and I can't help but look back and try not to cry or scream. Their eyes are focused on me with their mouths wide open. There's a strong scent of blood, and I feel paralyzed with fear. Here's the thing, the second I make any hint that I'm not asleep anymore, I'm completely fucked. I will die, and there's nobody around to save me. I've been trying to think of a way out of this, but the only idea I have is to rush for the front door and scream for help, hoping my neighbours hear me. It is risky, but if I stay here, I will surely die. He's waiting for me to wake up and see his masterpiece. You're probably wondering what's going on. I do tend to get ahead of myself sometimes. About 3 hours ago, I heard screaming from the other side of the house. I got up and went to check on the noise before realising I had to use the restroom. Instead of doing the smart thing and investigating, I used the bathroom first. I could have gotten myself killed right then and there for my stupid actions. I did my business and took a peek outside the bathroom. There was blood on the carpets. I got very worried and ran back to my room, hiding under the sheets like the pussy I was. I tried to convince myself to go back to sleep, that it was just some really vivid dream or something. But I heard my bedroom door open. Like the terrified child I was, I peeked out from under my blankets to see what was going on. I could see something dragging my parents into the room. It wasn't human, I can tell you that. It was hairless, with no eyes or clothing. It walked like a caveman, with its back slouched as it dragged my parents. But this thing was much smarter than any caveman. It was aware of what it was doing. It propped my dad up on the edge of my bed and made him face me. It then sat my mother down in the chair and positioned her towards me as well. It then started rubbing its hands on the walls, staining them with blood, and drawing a circle with the devil's pentagram in it. This thing had made what it would probably call a masterpiece. To finish it off, it scribbled a message onto the wall that I couldn't read in the darkness. It then positioned itself under my bed, waiting to strike. The scariest thing now is that my eyes have adjusted to the darkness since then, and I can read the message on the wall. I don't want to look at it. It's terrifying to think about it, but I feel I need to see. I peek at the creature's masterpiece. I know you're awake.
You have your father's eyes. That's what everyone would tell me. I look exactly like my mom, but I have my father's eyes. It became one of those things where I heard it so often it started to lose meaning, but I couldn't lose the eyes. I saw the fear in my mom's face when I hit her full blast with my gaze. I saw the pain, the trauma she endured at his hand. My father was not a nice man. He was an abusive alcoholic. He would hurt my siblings and my mother, and me. As I grew, I understood that this was not the way a father was supposed to treat his wife, his children. Being the oldest of 4, I knew It was my responsibility. I had to do something. So I took his eyes. He was passed out drunk when I came after them, wielding a small pocket knife he had given me. I tried to pry them free, but only managed to scrape off part of one when he woke in a pain-fueled rage. Terrified, I started stabbing at him. He grabbed at me, pinching my arms with his grip, and tried to force me off of him. Screaming and crying, I kept stabbing and slicing, only stopping when his grip finally loosened and his body fell slack. Then, I was able to finish my task. The police called it self-defense. They saw the bruises on me and my family, spoke to everyone, and found out what we had been through. They didn't even question the 2 gaping holes left where his eyes should have been. Now I keep his eyes in a small box in the back of my closet, and when people say I have his eyes, I simply smile and say, yes, I do.
There is a girl named Esther Claire, with hollow eyes and unkempt hair. The only way to summon her, a list of things that must occur. The moon is full, the night is cool, you cannot miss a single rule. Clap 3 times, spell her name. With 2 friends, you will play this game. If you should try to be this brave, oh, you must expect to dig your grave. She visits you at 10:30 then. She waits for you outside your den. She sings a song so high and shrill, it makes you look, gives you a chill. Your hair will rise, your knees will shake, your heart will race, your teeth will quake. If your eyes meet her wild stare, then your demise should happen there. By then it is too late to hide. She will follow you right back inside. Her tongue will hiss, her fangs will gnash, her arms will swing, her claws will slash. You try to run, but with no luck. She'll bite your neck, your blood she will suck. She is the last thing you will see. You really should just let her be.
This week, I moved into a new house. The house is amazing, with 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a fenced-in backyard, and a big kitchen. The tree in the front yard is tall and strong and does a fine job of blocking my living room windows from the street. The water pressure is fabulous. The closets are large and the wood floors are brand spanking new. The only problem I've had so far is that my neighbors are rather loud. Our houses connect on one side, so we share a living room, bedroom, and a kitchen wall. All day, I can hear them banging around their kitchen, watching loud movies, talking, and their small child crying. It's a bit trying, but nothing I can't handle, I suppose. Now, to get directly to the thing that really concerns me, it started when I was in the shower this morning. I usually like to have music playing while I shower, but today I decided that I'd rather just enjoy the silence. The activity was fairly uneventful until, as I was in the middle of washing my hair, I heard my neighbors talking from the other side of the wall. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it sounded strange to me. It seemed that they were mumbling something, whispering, and occasionally laughing quietly. But I couldn't figure out how I could hear them if they were evidently speaking quietly. I thought that they must be standing absurdly close to their side of the wall in order for me to hear them in the midst of my shower. I didn't think too much of this incident until I was leaving for work an hour later. As I started to open my car door, I turned back to my house, feeling like I had forgotten something. As I looked up at my bedroom window, I realized that my neighbor's house shared a wall on the opposite side of the house from the bathroom. On the other side of the bathroom wall lies my bedroom closet.
That thing has been there for almost a week. The figure in the window. It looks featureless, only skin on a human frame. And it's pressing itself against the glass somehow. I don't know how it got there, and I don't know how to get rid of it. At first I thought it was a prank, a doll or mannequin that some jerks just put there to scare me. But I realized as I walked out of my house to put it away, that it wasn't there. I shrugged it off, thinking that someone had hidden it whilst I was looking through my door. But I went back in, looked out the same window, and it was looking in, staring at me. I walk around my house yelling for whoever it was to come out, but no one was there. The thing is hairless and naked, and it didn't look like it actually had eyes or even a face at all. But its head is turned towards me when I enter the room. When I sit on my computer, I can feel its faceless hatred boring into my neck. But when I turn around, it's innocently turning in a different direction. Finally on Thursday, I tried to open the window, but it's stuck. The thing's hands are keeping it down. But I got a good look at its face. Its eyes and mouth are behind the skin, pushing outwards. It started smiling at me. And that smile just got wider, and wider, and wider, until I thought its head would break in half. It raised its own hand and bashed the window with its palm. It was mocking me. But I saw the faintest crack appear where it had hit, and I backed away. No way did I want that smile in the same room as me. So I got a roll of duct tape and started covering the windows. I couldn't look directly at it. I nearly shit my pants just knowing it was watching me. But I couldn't help it. I took a quick glance at its skin-covered face, a small peek. It was angry. That grin was now a gaping frown full of teeth. The skin had ripped away from its mouth and I could see its cavernous throat. A menacing rumble started to fill the house, and that hairline crack began to spread like splintering ice. I pulled down the duct tape. The rumble stopped and the split skin healed over, and it began to smile again. Now it's night, and the noise hasn't started again. Everything is quiet now. There are no sounds, no rumble, no crackling glass. I can feel its claws gripping the back of my chair. I can hear its skin stretching as it smiles. It's watching me as I type.
I went home for a wedding a couple months ago. I timed it so that I could spend a couple extra days staying with my sister and her family, who live outside of Philadelphia. My sister has a son named Evan, and he's a great kid. He's 5 years old and loves exploring. He always carries around a stuffed rabbit he calls Thomas, and constantly talks to it. "Thomas, let's go play with this. Thomas, let's go find some frogs." I can't help but think of Calvin and Hobbes watching Evan play with Thomas. The problem is, Evan never listens when my sister tells him not to go wandering off alone. He's constantly running out into the woods near the house. My sister has tried everything to get him to stop going off alone. But short of locking him in his room or tying him up, there's no stopping him. Evan just doesn't understand how dangerous the world is. There had been a rash of kidnappings in the towns around where my sister lives. It really scared her, especially when she wasn't sure where Evan was half the time. When I was there, she got a call from the school. Evan skipped taking the school van home and ran away. My sister ran to her car and went to try and find him. She asked me to stay home in case he came back. Fortunately, after an hour, he made it home. He was fine and skipped in with his stuffed rabbit. Yeah, he brings it to school too. I call his mom while Evan ran to his room saying he had to do his homework, a journal for writing practice. My sister came home relieved but furious. She went up to talk to him. After a while, she came down with his journal, which had his longest entry yet. I fixed the spelling and punctuation, but this is what it said. "Today a man said, 'Come with me, your mommy is sick.' But he was lying. I said, 'Thomas, step on his foot.' Crunch. 'Thomas, step on his knee.' Crunch. 'Thomas, step on his back.' Crunch. 'Thomas, step on his head.' Crunch. He was a bad man. Later that night, I went to talk to Evan. I asked, "Did you and Thomas the Rabbit meet a man today?" Evan looked at his stuffed animal, then back at me, and laughed. "This isn't Thomas. That's Thomas," and pointed above me, over my shoulder. No one was there, but I could have sworn I felt breath on the back of my neck.
Pray to a good home. Dog, it's complicated. Please read the details below. A few years ago, a friend of mine who breeds Malamute dogs called me up and told me a strange story. He had a bitch that had given birth to a litter of puppies in the middle of a weird, crazy violent electrical storm. They all came out stillborn, except for one. He told me it's cute as hell, but it ain't no show dog. I tell you that. Poor little guy don't even look like a Malamute. You want him? The mother soon rejected him, and I ended up hand nursing the weird little bugger with a bottle. I named him Beast. He grew up, and up, and up. He's huge. And even though I feed him dog food, well, Beast ain't no dog. I don't know what he is, frankly, but he loves me with all his heart. And even though his appearance is pretty shocking, I love him back just as dearly. My wife recently died of ovarian cancer, and I was forced to sell the farm. I'm moving to a apartment in the city. It tears me up. It tears my heart in two. I simply can't take this giant dog thing with me. Beast is very intelligent, and he understands the situation. He's scared, and I feel horrible. Part of this agreement entails that every now and then I'll be allowed to come and see him. He will be a loving pet to a nice country family. He is a good old boy, and this whole thing tears me up inside. He will defend your property from intruders quite, how do I put this, aggressively. So if this is not desirable, be forewarned, and be prepared to dig a big old hole. Some additional notes for you. Beast hates garlic. I mean, he will lose his shit if he catches wind of it. So when you come to see him, make sure you haven't eaten any that day, or even touched the stuff. I cannot stress this enough.
It was the dead of night when the noises started. Sophie had always been a light sleeper, and she woke up almost instantly. What had woken her? The noise came again, sort of a scritchy sound that seemed to be coming directly from her left. Probably just a tree branch scraping the house. It kind of sounded like it could be. Sophie tried to tell herself that's what it was, but she didn't really believe it. She pulled the covers closer, palms sweating. There was the scratching again. It had moved closer to her head. Tree branches didn't move. Her heart began to race and her hands started to shake. It came again, louder, closer. Should she get up and turn on the light? Get up and go to her parents' room? No. Don't move. What was that? Stay put. Don't move. Okay. There was a weird voice in her head. Not good. Building up her courage, she ripped off the covers and ran for the door. Sophie raced down the hall and slammed the bedroom door behind her. The scritching stopped. Grabbing blankets from the guest bedroom, she flopped onto the couch and stayed there. Her parents would wonder why she was there in the morning, but it didn't matter. Eventually, Sophie fell asleep. Sophie worried about the voice all the next day. It had been very strange. She considered telling somebody, but they would just think she was crazy. Maybe she had just been dreaming, or hearing things, or only half awake. As the day wore on, she grew more and more apprehensive. That night, despite her better judgment, she went back to her room. She was fine. It was just one weird occurrence. Sophie stayed up a while, reading with the light on. I should turn off the light. The thought wasn't hers. It had come out of nowhere. But something else would say, you, not I, right? Anyways, it was getting late. Yes, it's late, and I should turn off the light. Hearing voices was bad. Sophie had watched enough horror movies to know that, but this is different. This is my voice. I shouldn't worry about it. I guess it's okay, isn't it? Yes, it's okay. I should turn off the light now. Sophie hesitantly turned off the light. She held her breath as if expecting to happen. Nothing's going to happen. I'm just being weird. Yep, it must have just been that noise last night. Freaked me right out. But I should try to go to sleep now. Yes, I should go to sleep. Sophie tossed and turned, trying to get comfortable. It was very hot in there. She finally fell asleep. But just after midnight, the scritching started again. It was just a tree branch. No, It wasn't just a tree branch. It was a tree branch scratching the house. Hey, I'm telling this story here. No, you're not. I am. Stop it. Never. So the tree branch continued to scratch. Sophie lay very still. But it's just a tree branch. I shouldn't worry. Yeah, just a tree branch. But she just couldn't shake the feeling that it was very hot in her room. No, she couldn't get comfortable because it was so hot. Ugh, go away. Let me tell my story, please. Just let me finish the story, okay? Fine. No more interruptions? I promise. Great. So Sophie just couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't a tree branch, that it was some sort of horrid creature scratching along the side of her house. But it's hot. I should open up a window. I guess it's a little warm, but I should open up a window. Fine, I'll open a window. Sophie got up and opened a window. She peered out, half expecting something to happen. When nothing did, she let out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a scaly, ugly hand shot out and snatched her wrist, dirty nails digging into her flesh. Sophie shrieked. The hand dragged her forward, out the window. She yelled louder. Upstairs, her parents heard the scream end abruptly. Sophie was never seen again. Just like you. Wait, what? You said you would leave me alone until the end of the story, and we have reached the end. No, please no. I have a family and friends. You should have thought about that before you wrote about me. But please wait. No. And you, reader, I see you too.
It all started with a slight itch at the tip of my right middle finger. I absent-mindedly scratched at it and continued playing Minecraft. I soon forgot about it entirely, as a creeper blew up the house I had worked on for an hour, as creepers often do. I cursed and began to rebuild. My rebuilding took me a long time into the night, as I had to gather more supplies. When I looked at my phone, the clock said 2:30 a.m. It was time to crash, or I would be useless in the morning. I slept well, without any dreams, only sweet blackness. I awoke feeling refreshed, eager to start the day. It wasn't until I gripped my shirt that I felt a stab of excruciating pain from my finger. I stared in shock. The tip was black and a foul white liquid was oozing from a small hole. What the fuck? How had this happened? I frantically scrubbed it clean, moaning in pain and disgust as I squeezed it slightly. The pus flowed out of it, coating my sink with a nasty-smelling slime. I grimaced and squeezed harder. Something popped, and the pus spurted in my face. I dry-heaved immediately, nearly falling. Frantically, I wiped my face clean. I'd need to have a long shower to get through this shit. Still, the finger oozed, though more slowly this time. Blood began to seep out of it as well, so I poured peroxide over it and bandaged the wound. Much better. However, my satisfaction at this was short-lived. The true horror came when I finally lifted my shirt. My stomach was nearly covered in black sores, each leaking the same despicable slime. I couldn't hold it back anymore. I vomited everywhere. To my shock, I had thrown up more of the white stuff. What was happening to me? Am I going to die? It was then that I felt the powerful, screaming itch all over my body. I began to scratch, taking chunks of flesh with each scrape of my nails. I couldn't help myself. Don't you get it? I couldn't stop. There was blood and pus everywhere. The room was beginning to fade. I blacked out, and when I came to, you were the first person I saw. I don't understand why you're looking at me like that. Don't you see the fucking sores? They're everywhere! Official report. Young male, approximately 23 years old, taken into custody. En route to psych ward for eval, subject is claiming sores are all over his body. No sores in sight, but he has nearly scratched himself raw. Possible drug abuse.
Before the video gets started, I wanted to let anyone know who wasn't aware that I'm having a fan art contest. I made a video about it last week, and I will link that in the description box. I'll try not to bombard you with that every time I have a video, But for those interested in sending in art, I want to make sure that you get the opportunity to do so. All the details are in the video that are in the description box. And just remember, you are helping design the new Duchess Dark merchandise. Good luck. I travel a lot for work. This isn't as glamorous as it sounds. It's actually rather tiring. After the first few months of excitement, the novelty faded, and the reality of my situation set in. This means that my back and limbs are almost always constantly sore. The back of my head and underside of my thighs molded into the grooves of my plane or vehicle seat. The other downsides to constant travel include occasional bouts of upset stomach from foreign food, body pain, headaches, and pest infestations. I can thankfully say that my worst experience traveling was when we booked into a hotel that was unfortunately crawling with bedbugs. But that's another story for another time. One of my traveling companions is an elderly lady who is rather religious. I personally love traveling with her because she's a seasoned traveler. I never have to worry about missing a flight or getting lost as I tag along. Another reason is because due to her extensive experience, she has a treasure trove of stories that she dishes out like treats during dull waiting times in the airport or while we're on the road. Her stories range from humorous to poignant to downright creepy. And if I had to be honest, I would rate her scary tales as my favorite. She was a gifted storyteller and had a way of spinning out the tale in a way that made me hang on to every word she had to say. I've had this job for close to 3 years now, and over time, I've built up my own arsenal of creepy stories to tell, and this is one of them. We often travel to certain places that are reportedly haunted. This ranges from old hotels to ancient manors. My very first work-related supernatural experience happened during my first work trip. I was 19, fresh out of university, literally bouncing with excitement over my job. We had settled into an old hotel for the night, and since we didn't book in advance, we were forced to share rooms. Not that I minded. I'm a very social person and I love having the company. My designated roommate was the elderly lady. She and I shared a king-size bed and fell asleep pretty quickly. My sleep, however, was short-lived, since I felt somebody tugging on the sheets. I admit that I got annoyed. We had been on the road for close to 10 hours, and all I wanted was a good night's rest. I kicked off the sheets and moved as far as I could to the edge of the bed, shut my eyes, and attempted to go back to sleep. I was finally dozing off again when I felt fingers stroking my foot. I was enraged. I snatched my foot away and exhaled in annoyance, hoping to convey my displeasure. I was about to say something when I noticed that my bedmate seemed to be fast asleep. Her hands clasped on top of her stomach. My anger died down somewhat as I sat there in confusion. After a few seconds of watching her steady breathing, I convinced myself that I must have been dreaming. I settled down and lay on my side, and after a few minutes, I was dead to the world. This time when I woke up, the situation was undeniable. I could feel strong hands clutching my ankles and pulling, and man was I pissed. I kicked once, hard, then sat up with a snarl, and that's when I noticed that the other side of the bed was empty. I screamed. Not my finest moment, I admit, but I was so tired and frustrated that I thought I could get away with being a brat for once. At the sound of my screech, the bathroom door opened and light flooded the room. My companion stepped out in alarm, her eyes darting around the room for intruders, "What happened?" she asked, sitting beside me. I was fuming, rubbing my ankles. They seemed itchy all of a sudden, the sensation akin to having brushed against poison ivy. "I swear, I thought somebody was trying to pull me out of bed," I complained. "I felt hands on my legs. I'm not making this up, I promise." She shushed me, then furtively drew the blinds to peek out. The window was slightly open and a breeze snaked in, making us both shiver. "Are you all right now?" she asked, getting me a glass of water. I thanked her and then gulped down the water, nodding that I was fine. For some reason, she seemed disturbed. After a few minutes of idle conversation, she persuaded me to go back to sleep. She kept her light on, claiming that she was already awake and was going to do some light reading while I caught up on some sleep. The rest of the night passed without incident. During breakfast the following morning, I enthusiastically told my other companions about what had happened the night before. My roommate was oddly silent. She finished her breakfast quickly, then said she was going to take a quick walk in the garden before we left. I downed the rest of my breakfast and followed her. While we walked briskly around the garden, I brought up the incident the previous night. At first, she didn't say anything. Then she turned to me and told me something that made me shiver. "I didn't want to bring this up until we left," she said. "But last night there was a reason I didn't go back to sleep and kept the lights on. You see, when I stepped out of the bathroom, I saw a pair of arms with very long fingers slither back under the bed."
It was dark, and it was cold. A shiver would go up my spine. My hair would twist and dance in the wind that blew around me and occasionally blocked my vision. I forgot how long I had been wandering around this place. Hours or months had passed, yet I had no idea because it all felt like an eternity. Occasionally I would run into the occasional poor soul once in a while, but they had one of 4 reactions: remorse, anger, disbelief, and pain. All of them shared one thing: they didn't want help. They'd suffer their own way and find a path that would lead them to some form of torment, yet mine had not shown yet. I remained wandering, forever alone and forever in pain. It was like a deep depression that never left and lasted longer than you wish. They had no cure or therapeutic help because no one knew how it truly worked or believed it didn't exist in the first place. And those who knew of its existence would brush it off and say, "You deserve it." Yet somehow you have hope. And somehow, while walking, you find hope that you'll find something different. A light, a different and more peaceful path, or a hand to hold so the time isn't so lonely. But that's only hope. And that's what keeps you going. Even in constant misery is what keeps you walking. And all you have are your thoughts of what you were thrown into. A path slowly showed itself to me. I couldn't tell if it was a glowing light of peace or the burning light of fire that shone.
When I was in 8th grade, my parents separated. Basically, my mom packed her and I up one night, and we moved into my grandpa's and didn't look back. We ended up living there through my high school years. When he died, my parents officially got divorced. My mom remarried, and we moved into the city with my stepfather. My grandpa lived on the first floor of the apartment, and the owners, an elderly couple who were family to us through marriage, lived on the second floor. The property also had a small in-law cottage out in the back where my uncle lived. For some reason that I will never understand, there was no lock to get into the actual building if you entered through the back. The back door opened into a landing where there was a locked and deadbolted door to our apartment, and then 2 sets of stairs. One led up to the also locked and deadbolted door of the second floor apartment, and the other led down to the basement where there was also no lock. Our apartment could also be entered from the front of the building, but in order to access the second floor apartment or the basement, you had to go through this landing. The basement was actually pretty nice, and at one point they had started to convert it into its own apartment before they ultimately decided to make the in-law cottage instead. So in the basement, there was a full kitchen complete with an oven, a sink, and a refrigerator. The washer and dryer, which was shared by all of us, was also in the basement, as well as just some general storage stuff. The basement was entirely open except for a back room that was full of storage. It had one of those kind of swinging saloon type doors where you can see above and beneath them. The storage area was longer than it was deep, so you couldn't really see anything much behind the doors aside from shelves. You had to walk in them and turn to really see the room. One night when I was in high school, I think I was 15 at the time, after taking a shower, I saw that the laundry bin in the bathroom was pretty full, so I grabbed a ton of laundry and headed down towards the basement. It was pretty late at night, but I figured I would at least get it started and move some things over in the morning. I tossed everything onto the ground and started sorting out colors when I got hit with a horrible feeling in my gut. The basement was not at all a creepy basement. It was well lit and pretty welcoming with the kitchen and everything, but for some reason that I can't explain, something just started to feel wrong. Anyone who has ever been hit with the feeling that they were being watched knows exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know how or why it came over me, but it was something that I couldn't shake, and I found myself looking over the saloon doors and the only part of the basement that I couldn't see in its entirety. I don't know why, maybe just to assure myself I was being a big baby, I started to walk towards the back room, but stopped myself just as I reached out towards the swinging doors. I've been a horror fan for as long as I can remember, and had seen more horror movies than I could count, and I knew that if that was a movie, I would be calling myself a dumbass and saying not to go into that back room. I quickly snapped my hand back and ran up the stairs, leaving all the clothes behind, and into our apartment, where I locked the doors and immediately told my mom that I just had the worst feeling in the basement and that I was super creeped out. Despite me not being the type of person that scares easily, she basically rolled her eyes at me and told me to go to bed. I ended up doing as I was told, though it took me a bit to shake the feeling and finally fall asleep. Later that night, my bladder woke me up and I stumbled out of my room to go to the bathroom. I didn't turn any of the lights on as I started making my way towards the bathroom because it usually woke up my grandpa and I didn't want to bother him. When I got closer to the bathroom, I noticed my mom standing in the doorway of her bedroom, and something looked off, and it took me a moment to realize that she was clutching the phone. She then noticed me and whispered to me to get against the wall, which I did without hesitation. It took a few moments for the grogginess to wear off and my eyes to adjust to the darkness before I could see what she did. My mom's bedroom was immediately off of the kitchen. The kitchen was where the back door that led to the landing and the basement was located. The door had a tiny window up top with a small but thick curtain. It was thin enough that you could see that someone was outside of the door, but thick enough to not be able to make out any of the features of the person on the other side. But there was someone on the other side of the door, and every now and then the doorknob would move, and you could hear this scratching sound was on the other side. I have never been so afraid in my entire life. I'm not sure how I managed to do what I did next. It was like someone else had taken control over me entirely. I slid down against the wall that I was clinging to and started to crawl against it in the darkness towards the kitchen. My mom looked petrified, watching back and forth between me and the back door. She kept whispering for me to stop and go back, but I kept moving forward, low and against the wall, towards the counter where I carefully grabbed a butcher knife. I was shaking the whole time I moved, with the knife in my hand on the ground next to the fridge, which was next to the door the man was trying to get into. I had this horrible feeling that I was going to be killed, but if I wasn't going to go down without a fight. It felt like I sat there forever in the darkness, next to the door with my mom hiding in the bedroom doorway across from me, just waiting. But it was only for a few minutes. My mom had already called 911 before I had woken up and stumbled my way towards the bathroom. The lights from approaching squad cars soon filled the kitchen, and from the other side of the door, I could hear a sudden clamoring and commotion and the slam of the back screen bursting open as the would-be assailant took off running. It was around 3 a.m. when this happened, so it was completely dark outside, and we lived right by some train tracks and very thick bushes and trees that made it easy for the man to escape the cop that pursued him. The police came in and took statements from my mom and I. My grandpa, who was partially deaf, had managed to sleep through almost the entire thing until the police came through to search the apartment and make sure that we were okay. The outside of the door and the doorknob were both covered in deep scratches, like someone had been going at it with a knife, trying to figure out how to get in. But that wasn't the most horrifying part to me. That was reserved for the basement. The clothes that I had brought down were not where I had left them, and they had been thrown about and disheveled, and the back room, the one with the swinging door that I had stopped myself from going in, the boxes that were out of view had also been thrown about, all opened, obviously gone through, with some things missing, and there were some wrappers from food on the floor. He had been down there looking for something to steal. He was down there when I went down to do laundry. I had almost walked into that room, and based on what we had seen on the door, he had a knife. To this day, I can't help but find myself sometimes thinking about what would have happened if I had walked into that room.
No mushy stuff. My parents would insist whenever I told them I was going on a date. I figured it was what parents had to say. No one wants to think about their kids having a sex life, just like how kids don't like to think about their parents having one. So I went on my dates, and they were great. Lots of fun, countless good times, and yes, plenty of sex. Plenty of mushy stuff, as my parents were to say as I rolled my eyes to the ceiling. Like any kid, I did my best to hide it from them. I was always careful. Protection was always involved, although with my most recent girlfriend, we sometimes took risks. Passion is a hell of a thing. I'd met her at work, and it was love at first sight. Whenever we were alone, I just couldn't help myself. I'd like to say we started off slow, but that'd be a lie. We were physical from day one. Sadly, our romance was short-lived. Only a couple days after we'd met, I learned that she'd been transferred from the home where I worked to another location across town. My heart broke. I didn't have a car. I walked everywhere. The news was devastating. I did my best to gather my thoughts, then I made a plan to sneak out in the middle of the night to visit her. She didn't know it yet, but it'd be our last time together. I couldn't take the risk of getting caught. Around 11 p.m., I told my parents I'd be going out.
"Don't forget the curfew,"
they warned. I nodded and left. After a long walk, I arrived. A little while later, I embraced my girlfriend, then held her shoulders and stared into her eyes. I took a deep breath and told her what was bothering me. I said I couldn't see her anymore. It was too risky. I couldn't traipse all the way across town in the middle of the night. My parents would kill me. I think she took it okay. It was sad, though. I really cared for her. I courted her for a while, then made quiet, passionate love. After we'd finished, we spooned and enjoyed the afterglow. Then I checked my watch. It was almost 3 a.m. I was 2 hours late for curfew. Where had the time gone? I swore and got up and began running. I made it home in 20 minutes. All the lights in the house were on. They'd been waiting for me. I was fucked. I walked in the front door, filthy, disheveled, and stinking of the acts I'd been engaging in all night.
"You're late,"
my dad yelled.
"How many times have we told you? No mushy stuff, and look at all the dirt you're tracking in."
I looked behind me. I'd left a trail from the front door all the way to the living room. My parents lectured me for a half hour. They were cruel and asked invasive, offensive questions. I didn't answer any of them. I just got madder and madder. When they realized they were getting nowhere, they just got up and went to bed. My mom told me how disappointed she was in me. One parting blow to make me feel terrible. I ran up the stairs to my room, closed the door, and collapsed, sobbing, on my bed. When I finally calmed down enough to breathe properly, I turned over and stared at the ceiling. I thought about my girlfriend. I thought about the good times we had in our short relationship. After a while, my tears dried and I even smiled a little. I sighed and got up. Maybe I'd see her again. I'd have to wait a while, but it wasn't impossible. Things could be good again. I looked down at myself and sniffed the air. I obviously needed to take a shower. My mouth and cheeks and fingers and crotch were still covered with mushy stuff. It would be so much better if we'd lived closer to the graveyard.
This is not something that happened to me, but to my husband Brett when he was 10 years old, and his mother Kim and his brother Mike. My husband moved around a lot when he was growing up. Kim was a single mother who left an alcoholic and abusive husband. Mike was an introvert, and my husband Brett was an outgoing, all-American boy who always had to be doing something. They lived in 5 different homes and apartments in the same city, but the one he mentioned the most is a 2-story home for rent on Maple Crest Drive. A week after they moved in, small things started to happen. Things would get moved, water in the sinks would start running, and the lights would flicker on and off. They had electricians, plumbers, etc. come in and check, but they never found anything wrong. Things went on in this odd way for a while, but then more started happening. They would hear stomping on the stairs, appliances coming on by themselves, and shadows moving down the hall, passing their bedroom doors. Then about 6 months from the time they moved in, the shadows started coming into their bedrooms. Brett often woke to something moving in the corner of his room. He said one night he was sleeping with his hand over the bed, and something bit him. He would also hear whispers, but they were never clear enough for him to understand. The scariest things would happen to Kim. One night she woke up feeling like she was being choked, but there was no one else in the room. Sometimes she would be cleaning and something would pull her hair. But what she says is the scariest night was the night that she was dragged down the hallway and down the stairs. Everyone thought she was crazy. They didn't see the scratches or the bruises or the mental strain Kim was going through. She went to the library and got this book on the paranormal. The book instructed to put flour or baby powder on the floor. The first night, nothing happened, but the second night, there were prints in the flour. They looked like what a gorilla fist looked like if you made it longer and put talons on the end. That next morning, they packed their bags and moved into an abused women's shelter. They never figured out what it was, just that it terrorized Kim and Brett, but it left Mike alone.
My fingers trembling with excitement. I opened the package. Just as I hoped, it was a camera I won on eBay. With mild delight, I realized I had received a better deal than I had realized because the previous owner had left a memory card in the slot before sending an email to the seller alerting them of the mistake. I decided to see if anything was on it. Setting the camera on slideshow, I watched as the camera displayed a picture of a shipping label. My confusion turned to horror as, oh my gosh, the next image was of a person brutally murdered. The rest of the card was altering pictures of a mailing address followed by a murder scene. The last image was of the shipping label from the box I had just opened.
I'm renting this small ranch house in my town. I'm trying to live out on my own so I don't have to mooch off my mom and dad anymore. However, the other day I found a small door in the floor of my closet. I would have never noticed it had it not been for a small hole in the floor. And when I say small, I mean it was big enough for about a finger, maybe two. I was a little freaked out when I saw it, but then I thought about what maybe it could be. So I ventured down there. There wasn't a staircase or anything, it just dropped down. Not surprising, I had to crouch a little bit to make it through. After walking for a minute, I came to another drop down that led to a huge room. It looked like a bomb shelter. The walls were made of concrete and there was numerous shelves all peppered with canned food. My cell phone flashlight wasn't doing much for a light, so I started to head back to get a real flashlight when I heard it. Something was shuffling off in the distance. I shined my light over towards the sound, but it only cast a light of about 6 inches ahead of me. I heard it again, and I swear I thought something human-sized scuffle by the light. I booked it out of there, running as fast as I could in the awkward position the tunnel forced on me. I came out of the hole and immediately threw everything I could on top of it. This consisted of school books, dirty clothes, and the like. Next, I dialed 911. The police showed up within 10 minutes. I explained the situation and showed them the small room. They went down one at a time. If you're hoping for some super climactic firefight, I'm sorry. There was no firefight, but there was someone down there. They pulled a man from the bunker. Someone was living under my house. Turns out he went down there in 2012 when the world was supposedly going to end and never came back up. He'd been missing for 5 years. His food and water stash was so massive, it took nearly 3 hours to clear out. This guy seriously knew how to prepare. I'm not sure what he's doing now or where they put him, so please don't ask. As far as the trap door goes, I've nailed it shut. I'm never going down there again.
Lacey was 5 months pregnant.
It was a summer pregnancy, and this summer was hot. She would complain about the hot, sweltering days that she had to endure in her pregnant state. On many an occasion she would feel the child she was carrying move about, tumbling and weaving about in her belly. She didn't know the sex of her child yet, but the sonogram that she was going to have taken of her child in the next week would soon let her know. At night she would be kept awake with her baby, rumbling about. Not like the hot days were bad enough, but the nights, as hot as they were just as much to cope with. But Lacey didn't mind. She would often console herself with the fact that as long as the baby was moving about, then it had to be healthy, right? Not a day had passed that she wouldn't think about it, whether it was a girl or a boy. Not that this mattered, she was just so overjoyed to be pregnant. You see, it took her nearly 3.5 years to get pregnant. She was married to a wonderful man who was an accountant for a big firm for the last 3 years. They had met a year before they had married and had been in love ever since, so trying for so long seemed like it was never going to happen for them, but it did, eventually. The week passed by slowly but surely to the day that they had to both visit the hospital for the checkup and the sonogram. Both feeling excited, they waited in the busy waiting room to be called into the room by the nurse. "Mrs. Lacey Turner," shouted the midwife. "Here we are," said Lacey, as she stood up from the chair as her husband gently lifted her up. The midwife checked her blood pressure and listened to the baby's heartbeat. "Do you want to hear it?" said the nurse. "Oh yes, please," said Lacey, looking excitedly at her husband. The midwife switched on the heart monitor speaker on loud for them to hear. The racing heartbeat of the baby thudded over the speaker as they listened. It raced so fast and hard. What is that static noise?" said Lacey. The midwife turned up the volume from the speaker. "Oh, I'm sure that's just the speaker and the interference from the machine," said the nurse, as she turned it down again. But faintly you could still hear it. Unfazed by this, the couple were then guided into the next room. Lacey was asked to lay down on the chair until the doctor came in, and so she did. Laying there with her husband, quietly, she anticipated the doctor's arrival. "I wonder what the sex is," she said to her husband. "Well, as long as it's healthy, then it shouldn't matter," said her husband. The doctor came through the door and sat next to Lacey and her husband, applied the gel to the stomach, and moved the scanner across to her stomach. The doctor's face quickly turned from happy to nothing but a pale, withered face. What's wrong?" said Lacey, and as the doctor turned the monitor towards them both, you could see nothing but a static screen. That and the two round, glaring eyes piercing through the static. Smiling. Watching. Waiting. That was a sonogram, and it was written by myself, Donna Gladman. Thank you for listening.
You remember the feeling, don't you? The feeling that you're being watched, that if you make the slightest movement, you're dead. Everybody had that fear as a child. You wake up in the night, can't get back to sleep, shuffling back and forth from one uncomfortable position to the next, hoping to find a way to sudden slumber. You give up. There's no way you're going back to sleep anytime soon, so you simply turn to your side and stare out the window. The road, the lights, the trees, all seem so strange under the cover of night. You try to keep your mind quiet of any distractions, remembering that you still need to sleep. And that's when the feeling hits you. The feeling swarms over you like an ice-cold blanket that has just been spread across your back. You remember that it is night, and that night is when fear likes to hunt. You feel almost as if you are being watched from behind you. You can't see it, but its eyes are trained on you. You want to move, but you can't. If you do, something bad, no, Something horribly wrong is going to happen to you. The only thing you can do is remain quiet and still, and then it won't notice you. As you lie on your bed, frozen in fear, you begin to think about your bed sheets. If only you could quickly grab your bed sheets and throw them over yourself to hide your body from whatever evil monstrosity stands behind you. It could be done. Perhaps. If you're fast and precise, you could succeed. You decide to think no longer. You flip up and grab your bed sheets with both hands. Without looking around the room, you swipe back down, covering yourself with a thick blanket. Safety. It is then that your mind comes back to you, and you remind yourself that there is nothing there. Darkness clouds the mind and causes it to hallucinate, with the only limitations being your imagination. You slowly poke your head out of the sheets and scan your eyes around the room. Nothing. You place your head back on the pillow and slowly drift off to sleep. This is every child's fear, and parents always tell their children to go back to sleep, and that it is good for them to work through their fears. They are wrong, because what they don't know is that when the children hide under their bed sheets, the real fear is not what is standing over them, but what is staring at them from under the covers.
Have you ever taken acid? I doubt that you have. I'm about to try it out in a moment for the first time in my life. I honestly think that I'm entitled to it, after the shitty life that I have led. Call me what you will, but this is just the way I feel things have to go. It all started when my husband divorced me a month and a half ago. He meant the world to me, and the idea that he could even consider leaving me was alien in my mind. Then I find out about the affair he had. A woman who I'd always considered a high school friend suddenly became my worst enemy I had ever known. I actually managed to get in a bar fight with this particular person. But what did that solve? Absolutely nothing. And all I got was a bloody nose and a broken arm for my troubles. That wasn't even the worst of it. What killed me was when he took the kids. That was the blow that destroyed my very life as I knew it. Both of my precious little children were torn away from my loving arms to spend their entire lives with some cold-hearted woman that could never love them as I did. I take the acid quickly, before I can change my mind, and then I wash it down with a shot of scotch. According to what I read on the internet, consuming hydrochloric acid is a very effective form of suicide.
Hello, my name is Nathan Roberts, and I am dead. It wasn't anything too brutal. Just one day I was biking and a car was coming in. I don't remember much more that happened than that. Just that I was dead at a mere 11 years of age. It felt as if I had been knocked out by whatever happened, as the feeling I first got was much like waking up. I was in a strange place like nowhere I had ever been, like no place I'd ever seen. It was just a road where the only direction was straight. Everything else was in all-consuming blackness. I did the only thing I could do. I walked. I walked and I walked until I came to a building. I hadn't seen it in the dark before, as the building was black as the night itself. It had no windows, but it had a strangely welcoming feel to it, as if it would guide me through this desolate wasteland. Inside was a man. He was the most normal man I had ever seen, with normal blue eyes, normal black hair of normal length and a normal height and weight. His eyes were kind and hard, eyes that you knew would help you, but will offer no forgiveness shall you fail. I politely asked him where I was, why I was there, and if he can help me. To all these questions, he simply replied, yes. I asked him what he meant, and he said, I can help you, but you must first run an errand for me. This is not purely for my benefit, though. It will give you what you want as well. I was still confused how I asked him what I wanted, and he chuckled and said, why, in life, of course. You are dead. This is the land of the dead. But if you do me this errand for me, you will be granted a second life. I asked him what the errand was, and he explained. I was sending to the surface. While you are there, you may ask whoever, and as many people as you like, if they will donate 1 minute of their life to you, so you may live for at least you will live 1 minute more. This still seemed very beneficial to me, and I wholeheartedly agreed. When you were done, he said, just say the word done, and you will return here, and I will bestow upon you the minutes you received. And just like that, I was back on the surface. I was slightly transparent and looked much like an angel or other benign creature, but definitely not of the land of the living. Then I started asking. I asked for a very long time, months, maybe years, but I finally said done. I was back in the man's room. He congratulated me and said I had acquired 2,380,263,005 minutes of life. He told me that I would now be sent back to the surface to live out the rest of my life. Also, he added, you may ask more people for a minute of their lives as you come closer to your final judgment. I asked him, suddenly a little afraid what that meant. He explained that it was what happens to all that all fall into his grasp. Suddenly understanding began to dawn on me. I had made a deal with the devil, and not only had I sealed my own fate, but I brought everyone I asked for 1 minute closer to theirs too. He smiled at my understanding. A cruel celt has been forced into the shape of a crescent. Enjoy your new life, Nathan, he said, smoothly as he faded out of existence. I woke up. I was in the hospital. My body was wrecked with pain. I looked down at my body and saw people I did not recognize crying over my broken body. Blood-soaked bandages draped over my body. It looked as if I had gone through a human meat grinder and somehow made it out, but barely. I was dying again, and I knew it. This wasn't supposed to happen. I had just started my new life, and already it was ending. It couldn't be, though. I still had time left. I was very confused, and then I died again. I woke up. I was in the alley strolling around. It appeared to be very late at night. I walked through the alley very quickly, only to be pulled back by the collar of my shirt. I turned around and came face to face with a small rat-like man with a mane of hair that looked as if it had been never washed. He pulled a gun on me and asked for my money. I told him I didn't have any. He shoved the gun into my stomach and I began frantic. I started screaming for help. He knew it would attract too much attention, and he blew my guts out. I was dead for a third time. I awoke again, this time on the cliff face. It seemed all my deaths had happened shortly after I awoke. It was like a dream where you are violently transported from one fake reality to another. The only difference was that this wasn't a dream. It was real. My watch read 9:48 a.m. Our group had started climbing up the cliff face. I felt terrified of heights, even though I never had before. In my panic, I did not harness myself and slipped. I fell down the mountain. When I stopped, I knew I was beyond repair. I made a Herculean effort to move my arm to face. The watch read 9:49 a.m. Exactly 1 minute. Yet again I awoke. This time I was strapped down to a flat table. My limbs were slick with liquid, but I was blindfolded and could not see. Finally the blindfolded was yanked from my face. I saw him. I saw the man in the black building. He was smiling, but the smile was too wide. It was as if his face was just one big smile. "Don't you see?" he asked. "See what?" I replied on the verge of panic. He cackled. "You made a deal with me. Don't you know who I am? I am Satan, and you will live in a torment that is just silver better than what I deal out. And that is because of one reason. It is finite. My wrath is eternal, and you will feel it soon enough." "Why?" I plead. "I am not crying." "To teach you a lesson," he explained. "That the world is a cruel place. Nobody just gives out gifts. Charity is a lie. They knew. Every single person you asked knew what minute of their lives they would give you." Then it hit me. It was so gut-wrenchingly depressing that I just wanted to curl up in a ball, but I couldn't. I was destined to live the last minute of 2,380,263,005 people's lives. To suffer 2,380,263,005 deaths. And when it was all over, I was to live in eternal torment. But I can run. I can try to run forever. I can collect minutes from people, and people are always being born. Please help me, I beg you. I only ask for a small donation. Just 1 minute.
Well, my lovely Lilies, the video's coming to a close. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And especially subscribe to all these amazing narrators. But wait, I just found something. A special story titled The Birthday Song. Happy birthday, they used to say. Happy birthday to you. In the not-too-distant future, we were going to have flying cars, endless food, miracle medicine, and a world of peace. Until all the adults went away. No one knows what happened. It just was as surreal as reality can get. Many of us just woke up to the empty beds and houses. Alarms blaring with no certain answers from their users. No notes goodbye. No missing cars. Nothing that I could discern would have signaled our parents to have been taken by force. It wasn't long until we knew for a fact they had all just disappeared. It's still happening. Every time one of us ages, we turn 18, and we're just gone. Few see it though, and it's hard not to blink when you're focusing that hard. But 1 second you're there, and the next you're not. I wonder if it's better there. Wherever they go, I mean. It certain isn't any good down here. Oh, at first it was normal. We all grieved, panicked, and tried desperately to decide on what we should do next. Some of us try to take on responsibilities, help the little ones adjust. Then the fire came. For a while we weren't sure how, but as we scrambled to organize the hysterical children, we saw them. They were crazy, with way too much liquor in them. They were throwing around homemade Molotovs. They took us over. We didn't really get a choice. They had guns. What were we supposed to do? Worse, the kids just loved it. I mean, they were timid at first, but then they just fell in love with being able to play with real guns. And the shadows. I don't know if they're real or not, but it certainly isn't helping. We hear noises at night. In the distance, we see movement. And these crazies, they took over our camp. Our protectors. The little babies may eat that right up, but we know better. They do too. I see it in their faces when they look at me. Try something. It is written all over their face. It wasn't long till the first kid got shot. They died, and I couldn't do anything. That poor little kid thought he was protecting us from the shadows. She was coming back from the restroom. You get the idea. Those crazies had him beat, and when he cried for mercy, they shot him. Justice, they called it. We called it madness. We called it tyranny. And we tried to stop it. No one can say we didn't try. But the kids were scared. And after weeks of taking in other refugees and hearing more stories about the shadows, everyone just turned to the guys with the guns. I don't know what is happening elsewhere, or what's happening where you're at. But at night, I hear the low gurgling sounds from the shadows. But that doesn't overwhelm me. It's the nights. I promise I hear gunfire and screams in the distance. I wish I could do something right about now. I wish I didn't have to listen to them all. Scared, crying, alone. Have you ever read The Lord of the Flies? Perhaps not. Whoever hears this won't remember us. You won't remember me. I guess that's why I'm recording this. So that someone will remember us. No. I'm recording this because even after all the trouble we caused, even after executing everyone else who tried to put a stop to them, they didn't kill me. It's because they know they don't have to. I'm recording this because today's my birthday.